So graphing piecewise functions is putting together all of the other graphing of functions that we have done. The thing to understand about this that makes it different, and I think maybe makes it confusing for all of you, is that we're doing some restrictions on the domain. So if you look at this on the right-hand side, over here, these are the domain restrictions. They're telling us, hang on, they're telling us what x values are going to be valid for when we go to the actual function. So over here, we've got what the function or what the y or what the behavior of this is doing. So we put in the x values here to see what the y values do for the different parts of the function. So we can kind of think of this as divided into parts or pieces. If I look and say, okay, so the first part of my domain goes for all of the x's that are less than or equal to -1. So if I kind of just think of this, is that here I have my first place it's going to change. Then in the second part of this function, I go from -1 to 3. Okay, so those are not part of the graph. I'm just putting those in there so you can see visually what's happening. All right, if we go back to this, the first part of this equation, so I'm going to do it in blue. It's the line x minus 1, which means I start with a y-intercept of -1, and then I'm going up 1 over 1 to get this line. What we have to understand is that is valid here in our restrictions only where x is less than or equal to -1. So that means at -1 in the x, that's where my function starts, and it goes for all the x's that are less than. So I don't need any of this as it passes that first breaking point. You can see I've used a solid dot because my domain restriction says x less than or equal to. Okay, so the next piece of this is an absolute value function that is shifted to the right 2 and down 3 and has a stretch of 2. So that means I'm going up 2 over 1 in both directions, up 2 out 1, and so on. So I'm ending up with this absolute value that looks like that. Okay, now I've got to pay attention. It's just between my 2 green dashed lines. At x equals -1, when I'm over here, it's not including that point. So I'm going to erase that and make it a little better. So it's going to end right here. And I'm going to have an open dot. Where I'm at x equals 3, now there I'm going to have a solid dot because of or equal to. And then anything beyond that is not included in my domain restriction. Okay, then I'm going to look at my last piece. My last piece is going to be this line that has a y-intercept at 1 and a slope of 1/3. So I'm just going to kind of think of this. I would start it at 1, go up 1/3, and there's my first point that's part of the domain. Up 1/3, up 1/3. Okay, because of this that is just greater than, I know I'm going to have an open dot at the x equals 3. I'm going to go to the right. So again, let's remember that these two green lines that I put in to help you see, those are not part of the function. All we've got is that. So that the blue function, the top one, happens where x is less than or equal to 1. The middle function, this red one, the absolute value, happens between -1 and 3, does not include -1, but does include what's happening at 3. And then this last piece, the purple one, is for all the x values that are greater than 3, but does not include 3.